Dear students, be welcome to this class of Economic Integration. My name is Alejandro de Mendoza. I'm going to give you this class in order that you can see how is the process and work of the economic integration here in Colombia and in other countries. So for that, I'm going to share my screen so you can make follow of the presentation. Let's see if there is anybody connected. Okay, no one. So let's continue. The presentation is going to be in Spanish, but I'm going to speak in English in order that you can make an advantage in the language by hearing it. So, okay, let's start with the video class. Okay, the name of the conference is Integration in Agreements of Economic Integration. My name is Alejandro de Mendoza, and the date of today is 24 of April of 2018. The objective of this class is to teach you about the economics integration agreements that our country has with other countries, so you can establish and define the formation of economic blocks in order to increase and improve the commercial exchange of goods and services between nations. Okay. The day order is going to be first, we are going to see the definition, then the history, then the advantage of economic integration, then the disadvantage of economic integration, uh, um, forms, reasons, institutions that makes the economic integrations. We are going to see the GATT, the OMC, the International Finance Corporation, the International Monetary Fund, the economic integration agreements signed by Colombia, the economic complement, the TLC, the preference tariff codes, and agreements to avoid the double payment on taxes, and multilateral agreements. And finally, we're going to see the conclusions. Okay, let's start by the definition. The concept of economic integration can be defined as the formation of economic blocks in order to increase and improve the commercial exchange of goods and services between nations, and is in search of, first, elimination of obstacles to trade; second, free movement of goods, services, and people. Okay, there are barriers between the countries. Third, the reduction of transport costs for the distribution of products and merchandise. Um, for the fixation of tariffs that you have to pay in taxes and other stuffs. And five, the implementation of common policies in different sectors of the economy. Six, establish tariffs of external tariffs for non-member countries. And last one, increase trade among member countries of a trade agreement. The history. Okay, from the context of the history, it was hard that Britain was the country that led the theory of the international trade. Based on what? On free trade, or free trade of free trade barriers for the movement of capital and workers that were called the factors of production, and turn generate convertibility of succeeding currencies to the gold standard that was exchange rate of the time. It's said when World War One ended, Great Britain ceased to be the center of the world. Trade and international relations with other countries were affected. In 1929, with the global economic crisis, the system of international trade model of free trade collapsed, and their different countries implemented policies of protectionism, such as increasing tariffs and tariff restrictions on products from imports. What it means that this it means that all the countries had, in order to protect their economies, has to establish barriers regarding the World War One, in order to protect their economies, so they increase the process of importation taxes. So this helped to the economy to be developed and not to be affected in a higher way. Okay. Also, in the year of 1930. Okay, United States is stipulated by the law of a smooth hauling to increase tariffs and retain eliminate the gold standards as it means of payment and approve the law of import rights and the law of reciprocal trade agreements that was created, giving start to the commercial policy based on bilateral negotiation. That 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 is why it's possible to apply reduction to the different tariffs established by each country. This is how free trade was replaced by the bilateralism that prevailed until the year 1990, when the process of globalization and the competitive advantage of Michael Porter began. The United States maintained a liberal vision and proposed the reconstruction of a structured world from the economic point of view, which was composed of first, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, second, for the World Trade Organization, and third, the International Monetary Fund. With the creation of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund increases the international trade increases and the creation of new trade agreements that impel the integration process in order to um, establish parameters of negotiations between member countries. According to the book, The Supranationality in the Process of Regional Integrations by Jorge Mariño, it established that the integration process must comply with the characteristics such as every process of the economic integration must be gradual. Okay, the integration process starts with the economic approaches, but slowly and depending on each process. So with this, I think that this is a very basic concept of the history, but it gives you a lot of where it comes the economic integration agreements. So I think this is the basis for you in order that you can establish a perception of what is going to be next and what are you going to learn with this bio class and with the module that you have to study, make the activities and establish all. Okay, please remember that all that such as the papers and the activities that you are presenting for these economic agreements um, are in Spanish. The objective is that you develop the English. The English is necessary in all the organizations around the world, and here in Colombia, the second language is necessary. So I think that um, you can be a little bit confused, but everything is going to be okay. Just read the history that is writing here in Spanish, but listen me in order that you can translate and make better understanding of the second language. Well, okay. Continuing with the presentation, the advantages of the economic integration are: first, intensification of competition; second, specialization by product; third, technological and industrial development; fourth, power of negotiation with third countries; and five, greater political stability and reduction of external and internal conflicts between countries. Another is increased level of production and implementation of technologies. Another, increased competitiveness among nations. And finally, economic integration. The disadvantages that we have. Okay, bearing in mind that the economic integration seeks to increase free trade and the internationalization of different economies, it also has a disadvantage for developing countries since, first, it benefits more to who is more prepared. I mean, if you cannot make a comparison between Colombia's economy and United States economy or Russia's economy. So for Russia or for United States, it's going to be a more advantage to have an economic integration with Colombia than Colombia had to have a better integration with the United States for the cost, for the currency, and for all other stuffs. All the process of import export that makes United States is bigger than the one that Colombia makes. But uh, I'm not saying that Colombia doesn't make a good process of export. Yes, we have all the flowers, the coffee, and other stuffs that give us advantages. But regarding economic position, is better than the one that we have in the United States than we have here. That's clear for everything. So this economic integration give more advantage to other countries and also makes the commerce of the country um, a process of more delay and it can affect us in a very higher way. So as it gives us advantage, it also give us disadvantage. So, continuing our presentation, the shapes that we have for the economic integration are um, are different graduations or stages that this process can present according to the negotiations that are presented between countries. So, we have here three groups. Okay, so the first is integration forms, economic integration forms. Okay, each group has two another stages. The first for the first group is all that says with customs preference areas, it's the area where preferential treatment is given to the products coming from the countries that made up bilateral or multilateral agreements. The preference that are granted are tariff reductions. Here we have tariff reductions, free trade. uh, like here, we are here. Tariff reductions and free trade, okay? And the area of customs preference is divided into three areas, okay? Tariff preference area, customs preference area, and economic preference area, okay? The second one we have here is the free trade area or zona de libre comercio, as we said in Spanish. And it's a multilateral agreement that is signed between countries in order to eliminate trade barriers between them. But each country is free to define restrictions its economy can be affected. The free trade zone seeks to generate movements of goods and services in the established area. In this area, the member countries of the agreement maintain trade barriers with the rest of the countries in the area of the free trade. Also, the rules of origin and the individual trade policies are established with respect to third countries. Okay, this means that the free trade zone is an agreement that is signed by two countries, but that can be established with respect to third countries. Okay, um, here we preserve the tariffs, but to those outside, it's to the other countries. We have tariffs, but between the countries that is signed the free trade zone, um, it's a free trade area as the concept says. Okay, so, but it can be established to third countries or third parties. Okay, the next the next group that we have here is the customs union. Okay, it's a free trade area where members adopt a common tariff regarding imports from third parties. An example here in Colombia, Mercosur. Okay, in Mercosur, the customs union is the agreement that exists between countries and it's in search of the elimination of trade barriers between member countries. a common tariff policy against other countries. Customs unions require integration into the fiscal and monetary policies of the member countries. It's its main advantage, and it favors specializations within its territory translate into an efficient allocation or resources. Okay, so Mercosur's uh, eliminates or made a special tariff for all the import or export of goods that we made between the countries that are signed in this agreement. Okay, what are the advantages that we have here? The elimination of barriers to trade between the countries that are integrated. Second, the creation of a common tariff against the rest of the world. Third, only commercial transactions of goods and services are carried out. And finally, a common customs legislation is stipulated. Okay, it's an agreement between countries in order to make a possible advantage to make all the import or export processes of goods and services between the countries. The next group that we have here is the Economic Union. Okay, it's a market where a single currency is established and the same economic and monetary policies are adapted to a single money market. Each country undergoes a common monetary discipline to maintain exchange rate within authorized margins. Okay, we only manage one currency for all the import or export process and with rates. So okay, so this gives you an advantage in order to invest in that currency for all the process of import or export processes that we have in each country that is on the economic union. What is the objective? First, the elimination of barriers to trade between the countries that are integrated and creation of common customs tariff against the rest of the world. And second, the elimination of obstacles to free circulation of productive factors such as capital and labor. The next the next group that we have inside these three groups is the common market. The common market is a form of economic integration that is characterized by generating free mobility of production factors, capital, and job, where the mobility of goods, services, capital, and people is sought, and the latter are granted benefits such as homologation of university degrees granted abroad, employment generation, and social security. And the last one of the agreements that we have here in these three groups is the political union, and this integration requires the transfer of national and supranational institutions and therefore requires a strong political will. An example can be Panama, I think. Taking in account that the types of economic integrations we can speak or of a full economic integrations that occurs when within a commercial agreement is met with free trade of goods and services, common external tariffs, free factor mobility, and economic policy, which are elements that we must be met when two or more economics propose the unification of monetary and fiscal policies that require the establishment of rules to make decisions that obligate the member states to complete with the guidelines established in the different agreements and establish what will be the relationship with third countries, and the reason for economic integration is justified. The reason for why this integration mm, has to be made is the following. First, economic scales, as we can see here in our image. The economics in scales are or search of a broad and competitive market to increase production levels and reduce their costs in the face of competition. This is how economic integration seeks to increase the level of commercial transactions and eliminate trade barriers with the lead of the theory of international trade. Okay, so what we want to hear is to reduce costs and increase the production levels. Then we have the national integration. Okay, Okay, just a sec, just a sec, just a sec. Okay, then we have the specializations um, of handworking and to export products, which seeks the tariff in order to work of people and eliminate all the tariffs in that of products that we are going to make export process in order to give an advantage to the exportation of people that works and to bring advantage to the all the export process of the products that we have in the country. The next stage is the increase of negotiations between countries, all the negotiations that has to be made with import or export process. And these advantages are reasonable in order to reduce cost in an input process or to give more utilities in order to make an export process. The next stage is best competitivity between the levels of productivity, and this is in order that we can bring people to make a specialization or to make a better understanding of the work specialization to make better profits processes in our organizations. Okay, that gives you more advantage in the market of the world. And finally, we have the development of the activities between the countries and the members of the commercial agreements. This is in order to eliminate barriers and tariffs between the different countries and gives an implementation that is going to give us better productivity and eliminate costs. Um, the institutions that makes the economic integrations okay are the following. um, Regarding the conclusions made by the conference monetary and finance between the United Nations, the development of the Bretton Woods agreement was made. This was in order to establish rules for the commercial relations and finance relations between the industrialized countries, and this gives the place to the creations of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, and also to the general agreement of tariff preference in order to improve the negotiations of free commerce between the different nations, and these made systems of rules in order to establish the tariffs and make the reduction between the different tariff that was implemented for different countries regarding the agreement. Um, this this was the history that or the etymology that were made between different countries, and but when were developed the commerce world organization, the commercial transactions were placed of goods and services, and everything were placed in on just one organizations because in the past, as we can see, three different organizations were regulating this, and the f- the final is that all the institutions that makes the economic integration were based by the OMC. Regarding this, were found um, different agreements that were placed regarding the OMC. The first one is the GATT, that is an agreement created in 1948 with the objective of establishing rules for world trade and was replaced with the World Trade Organization in 1995. The GATT became the only existing multilateral agreement for the free movement of products for import or export between the countries belonging to that agreement. Um, the OMC or WTO. In 1995, the WTO emerged as the institution in charge of creating the rules that regulate foreign trade among the countries that made up the agreement and thus maintain the commercial policies established for the free movement of goods, services, technology, and people. The WTO fulfills the function of being a forum for negotiations where the nations that belong to these institutions help to solve trade problems that arise between nations, since what is sought is to eliminate obstacles to trade. At present, it is constituted by 159 countries. The principles of the WTO deal with issues such as first, trade without discrimination. Second, most favored nation. Third, national treatment. And fourth, free trade. I'm not going to enter to each one because it's going to be a very long process, but I just define one. Okay. Next, I'm not going to explain all the functions that has to have that the WTO, but three of these are first, the participation forum for the realization of commercial agreements, second, resolve commercial difference between nations, and third, provide technical assistance and training courses for developing countries. Okay, the WTO is the organization that has to manage all this in order the other countries develop strategies of growing their economies. Okay, the Finance International Corporation, okay, is the institution responsible for the private sector that aims to encourage investment and developing countries to help reduce poverty and improve the living standards of the inhabitants. It has two functions. First is multilateral investment, a warranty agency that the main objective of this is encourage foreign direct investment in the world and provides technical assistance to governments to improve their ability to respond to the need of the investors. And second, International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes is the institution responsible for the conciliation and arbitration of international discussions between nations. Next one, we have the FMI or IMF in English. The IMF was created in 1945 to promote monetary economic cooperation, establish financial stability for developing countries to facilitate international trade, promote economic development and reduce poverty. The IMF seeks to ensure stability of the international monetary system and establish according to the balance of payments how is the economic of a country and establish the exchange rates that allow commercial transactions between nations. The IMF offers services such as financial assistance and technical assistance. Next is the Economic Integration Agreement signed by Colombia. Okay, so when we know the institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, GATT, and WTO, it can be established that there are entities that cooperate for the development of different countries and that indicate the parameters for the free movements of goods and services through the commercial transactions of exportation and importation processes. The following will describe the agreements of FTA, bilateral and multilateral negotiations that Colombia has to facilitate international trade negotiations. First, we have the economic complementation. This is the denomination used by the country of Latin America to sign bilateral agreements between countries with the objective of increasing commercial transactions between their member countries. Colombia, on the year of 2030, has signed three agreements of economic complementation. First, Colombia against Cuba, second, Colombia Brazil, and third, Colombia Argentina. TLC. Okay. Regarding the TLC, we have five agreements. First is TLC Colombia Mexico, okay, that search and make better relations commercial. benefits and improve the conditions of the markets. Second, we have the TLC, Colombia, Chile. Okay, and sixth, to create new opportunities for negotiations and strengthen long-term trade relations between the two countries. Third, the TLC Colombia Northern Triangles that is composed by Honduras, Salvador, and Guatemala, and exists to encourage investments from and to the Northern Triangle. Next one, Colombia, Canada, wants to have greater commercial integration with Canada since the world give Colombia preference access. And finally, the Colombia United States agreement that seeks to have permanent commercial advantages. Okay, uh, the preference the tariff preference. Well, I'm not going to describe each one, but as we can see, we have the general system of preference of Australia, the general system of preference of Bulgaria, of Canada, of the United States, of the Russian Federation, with Hungary, with Japan, with Norwegian system, New Zealand, Switzerland, Turkey, and the European, and Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, and Venezuela. And we have offers lower tariffs, improving free trade between countries. Okay, agreements to avoid double taxation. Okay, we have the Andean community with Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia, Colombia and Spain, Colombia and Chile, and Colombia and Portugal. Regarding the multilateral agreements, we have the ALADI, that is Latin American Integration Association. Okay, and I'm just going to speak about the objectives. I'm not going to be large because we don't have much time, and I don't want to be extended more than I have, but and not to tire you, and that's why I'm just going to give the objectives. The ALADI is the Latin American Integration Association. It's composed by Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, Mexico, Paraguay, Peru, Uruguay, and Venezuela. And its main objective is to create a common Latin America free trade space with a flexible framework through bilateral, multilateral, and subregional relations, which allow developing and promoting the economic, social, and balanced development of the region. That's the already. And next one is CARICOM, Caribbean Community. Okay, it's in this agreement, okay, the objective is the promotion and projection of investments aimed at making the most of the advantages offered by markets and strengthen their competitiveness in international trade. Also, the facilitation of the creation and operation of regional joint ventures, among others. Okay, and the nations community. Well, okay, and the nations community, that is the last one. Um, what it serves or what it seeks is to make a free trade promotion between all the countries that are composed by them, and make a better and a fast way to make all the import or export process lowering tariffs and promote their markets in order to guarantee a better competition in the world market. Okay, with this, I end this video class giving four conclusions. First, the concept of economic integration can be defined as the formation of economic blocks in order to increase and improve the commercial exchange of goods and services between nations. Second, there are more advantages to be disadvantages that a country has when it comes to executing an economic integration process. Third, there are three forms of economic integration that this process can be present according to the negotiations that are presented between countries. And finally, it's essential to continue doing economic integration processes because this gives to each country an advantage regarding the others, regarding tariffs, regarding benefits, regarding free zones agreements, okay, as we have seen in this video class. Well, that's all, my dear students. I hope you have enjoyed the video presentations. I hope that all the knowledge has been passed, and if you have any questions or arguments or conclusions, just you can send a post or something like that in this video class. Have an excellent afternoon. Bye bye, dear students. Bye bye.